Good morning, Wabash. Thank you all for joining us today, or whenever you do, as this is being recorded and will be available to everyone, everywhere. I'm Marc Welch, Wabash Class of '99 and Associate Dean of Students. I'm joined by my colleagues, Heather Thrush and Beth Warner, who I will invite for them to introduce themselves now. Heather?
Hi, my name is Heather Thrush. I'm the Associate Dean for Student Engagement and Success. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're handling new student orientation and how students with disabilities can still access classroom accommodations, and also some information about how the Counseling Center will operate in the fall semester.
And Beth?
Hi, I'm Beth Warner, a Student Life Specialist. So I'll be talking today about student activities for fall and just how we're handling those and ways to stay engaged on campus.
All right, thank you. This is an interesting time of year to give a chapel talk, not only because of COVID, but because of who currently defines our Wabash community. As always, we have our students, faculty, staff, alumni, parents, and friends of the college. We also have another group of 250 plus new students and their parents to welcome now on this chapel talk, and then in person on campus next week. That said, as we go through today's talk, most of this will be new information, even for our most veteran community members, and especially for our new students and families. However, this is the difference. While it will be new for everyone, new students and families won't know how we've always done it or what we always used to do. And really, that might be a good thing, especially for a place that identifies and defines itself through its traditions. To all the returning and ongoing members of the Wabash community, things will and should be different. We are in a global pandemic. So, as things are different for you, perhaps inconvenient for you, I caution you to refrain from language like, but that's the way we've always done it, or we've never had to do it like that before. Again, of course not. We've also never, in our lifetimes, been challenged by a global pandemic. We would be remiss if we continued with business as usual, putting the health and safety of all of us at risk. And because of that, things will and should be different. One thing that will be different from the beginning, a habit that should begin your day, is the utilization of the Wabash COVID symptom monitoring app that you see on the screen now. I'm not going to go into great detail or discuss theories of habit formation, but we know about the habit loop from the book, Power of Habit. In short, we need a cue, we need a routine and a reward. So perhaps you set a morning reminder on your phone to complete this daily symptom monitoring. With time, it will become part of your routine. In fact, with time, you may no longer need the daily reminder or cue. And reward. Each person's reward will be different. I hope that you find being here on campus, together in this community, is a reward within itself. I certainly do. And for now, because I've only done it twice, and you can see mine there from yesterday, I think that the green go screen is pretty neat too. In his book, BJ Fogg in Tiny Habits, he also added that three things that you need to form a habit, you need to do it once a day, it needs to take less than 30 seconds, and it needs to require little effort. And I think you'll find this monitoring app to do all three of those things. For now, the app is up and running for Apple users. Search for Wabash COVID. The web-based version is prominently featured on the college's MyBash page, and very soon it should be available for Android users as well. While this is one more thing to do, it's vital for our community to do this if we want to continue living and learning on campus. After all, it really is a privilege to be here. And you can see there on the screen, that's from the MyBash page. If you haven't been on the website, hopefully you have been. Hopefully you've been on COVID-19 a lot and seen all this stuff already. This is actually from the COVID app. So it's available again via MyBash page or the desktop version as well. And so again, it's a privilege to be here, especially during a pandemic and at a time when so many other places have opted for online only. Now is the time, if you haven't already done so, to begin altering your behavior to minimize your risk and exposure to COVID-19. What you do now or don't do will affect what you bring to campus or hopefully don't bring to campus next week. And so I mentioned a lot of things have changed, at least physically, and I'll share some pictures here in a minute. But first, I want to talk about what hasn't changed. You might have seen that we were recently ranked in the FISC Guide to Colleges. And you can see here what characteristics of Wabash earned us such ranking. While some of these areas are certainly different in the time of COVID, what remains the same is our commitment to excellence in academics, competition, traditions, student housing, athletics, price category, and quality of student life. Brotherhood was also touted, no surprise, by the Guide to Colleges. I would argue that this is the one area that can't be touched by COVID, or if anything, will continue to grow stronger during these difficult times. It's up to you, men of Wabash. And so brotherhood is one thing that we can control. And I urge all of you to think about the things that really matter to you and those things that you can control. That's where you should put your focus and attention. I've heard from students concerned about all things that they won't be able to do upon their return to Wabash. And while that may be true, I encourage you to think about all the things that you can do and to create new opportunities that you wouldn't have had otherwise. As I said before, this place will look different. It's not business as usual in a lot of ways. As many of you know, Wabash is very light on policies and procedures. This often serves us well in many ways, but COVID-19 has also presented us with opportunities to be a bit more structured in our approach. For example, move-in will be scheduled and staggered, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. One thing that's affected many of you, and especially me, is the delay in having housing leaders return to campus early. Some were slated to come August 1st, and that has been pushed to August the 4th. This change was prompted in large part due to our contract for testing with CVS. Delaying your arrival to campus allows you to be tested prior to coming to campus. Continue to watch your email for more details on testing. You might also notice that some of the language and tone has changed. A few times, Dean Redding has reminded me that my language should be more directive and less subjunctive. At the end of the day, there are just some non-negotiables during the time of COVID. Wearing your mask, monitoring your symptoms, keeping your distance, using certain doors for entry only and others for exit, and much, much more. Decisions. As you know, at Wabash, we oftentimes form committees and seek input from so many people before moving forward. And while we've done that in many ways, at times, there's just not time to do that. And so you see a headline yesterday from the Wall Street Journal that one of our trustees posted, back to college plans devolve into a jumble of fast changing rules. And I'd like to think that it's not a jumble, but things are moving quickly. As you know, the situation continues to evolve and we have to adapt accordingly. At the same time, make no mistake about it, here in Student Life, we are here to support you and your success with care, concern, and compassion. So I've put up there 4 things that are, for the most part, new initiatives for us here at the college. Some of you already heard about our commitment through the JED Foundation to become a JED campus in terms of mental health. Along the lines of mental health, and Heather will talk more about it in a second, but we continue with the virtual counseling appointments. Most of you, hopefully all of you, have heard about the establishment of our care team here on campus. And this year, we're asking our resident assistants, the RAs and the residence halls, to do more than ever before. In recent years, fraternities have designated a chairman or a committee to be in charge of mental health for the fraternity, and that will continue. And always, the faculty, staff, and students have each other. In the spirit of support for you, I'm glad to announce that we've recently added to our staff over the summer Ryan Dobbs, Wabash class of '03, who will provide additional support in housing, as well as on the mental health side with psychoeducation, working with our counselors and Dean Thrush. We've also added a team of campus safety specialists, working under the direction of Security Director Tom Kearns. And so that's a new role to the college that we welcome, especially during this unprecedented time. As I mentioned before, move-in will be scheduled and staggered. I think at this point, 95+% of the incoming class has signed up for their move-in time, and you should receive an email confirmation yet today or certainly tomorrow regarding August 7th and 8th. Returning students, as you know, your dates are the 10th and 11th. Fraternities, you should have signed up via your fraternity president. If you live in a residence hall, you should have received an email link from Beth Warner to sign up on your date, but then you can pick the hour that you wish to arrive. It's important, guys, that you adhere to that you not only schedule a time for move-in, but then you show up as scheduled on the hour. Upon check-in, you'll receive a care bag, which has masks, a thermometer, water bottle, and hand sanitizer. In terms of what to pack, things are different. Pack lightly. You don't need to bring near as much stuff as you typically do. I would pack lightly and then unpack half of what you already threw in your bags. We're asking that you bring less stuff in large part because we might have to make quick moves for quarantine or isolation. Having less stuff in your rooms also gives campus services the opportunity to go in and do necessary cleaning, especially during breaks. I was talking with Dean McDorman yesterday, and he wanted me to throw in one more thing that you might think about bringing that perhaps you've not brought in the past, and that would be a lap desk or a clipboard, keeping in mind that we'll be having classes in some non-traditional spaces. So you could have class in Ball Theater, Salter Hall, the chapel, somewhere outside. And so as you think about having classes in these non-traditional spaces, it's important that maybe you bring a lap desk or a clipboard. So one common question I started to get as early as, March, April, is how I was going to do housing. And I thought about that and I quickly realized it's not how am I going to do housing, but how are we at Wabash as a community going to do housing? You can see on the screen, I broke it into two columns, places and people. These are all the places and people that go into housing. And it goes well beyond this. I really came up with this list in like a minute or less. And I think it shows the complexity of how we will do housing. And so you have the residence halls, the fraternities, we have campus-owned houses. Within those houses, then we also have dining, which would include the dining areas, but then the kitchen for food prep as well. We have private sleeping spaces, common spaces, restrooms, as well as outside spaces. I can tell you, as I think about restrooms, on the fraternity side, we will have campus services cleaning those restrooms in fraternities twice a week. So fraternity men, you should expect to see those campus services workers, greet them and welcome them in a gentlemanly manner. And that's true on the independent side as well. So those students who live in Wolcott Morris with the shared bath, or those that have private bathrooms in Rogie, Williams, or certain areas of Martindale, those private bathrooms will also be cleaned by campus services as well. People, it takes a lot of people. It takes the students at large. It takes all of our housing leaders, our RAs, our fraternity leaders, food service, campus services. Adrian Rhodes, who's our Director of Planning, Design, and Construction. Kendra Cooks in the business office, the CFO, the Wabash Fraternity Advisors, and of course, our office, the Dean of Students. So since you've been gone, I wanted to give you some insight in what's happened in the residence halls and fraternities. There has been significant work. And so if you follow me on social media, if you're on the parents' Facebook page, you've seen that. And so in a nutshell, we've done a lot of repair work and painting of ceilings, walls, floors have been stripped, cleaned, and waxed. There's been a lot of furniture repair, furniture removal, and then setup as we think about welcoming you back next week. And so we've made significant strides. I think you'll be really impressed. I think at the same time, it's important to note that this is a work in progress. And so not everything got done this summer that we wanted, but I think you'll see enough progress that gives you hope for the future that, gosh, look at how much they got done in one summer. And then in another summer, they'll get even more stuff done. So here's just a quick shot of a residence hall with some patchwork before the painting. You see the bunked beds. That's one thing that won't happen in a time of COVID, and we'll talk about furniture placement in a minute. but we can't have beds bunked this year. There's the lower level of College Hall and Theta Delta Chi. You can see a lot of furniture removed, but also a shining floor. Same thing at Sigma Chi. And so I want to talk about bedroom setup for a second in both fraternities and residence halls. Those rooms should be set upon your arrival. And because they are set, we ask that you not move the furniture. As far as room assignments, occupancy levels, capacity, and bed placement, we followed the best practices, and this is where Adrian Rhodes was very helpful in doing a lot of measuring and following those best practices of group housing. And so the measurement is 113 square feet per bed, or 10 feet from head to head spacing. And so if you're in a double and there's a bed, again, 10 feet from you, you might not be, one person will have their head going one way and then feet the other to create that distance. A lot of institutions have offered singles for everyone. We've not been in a position to do that in large part. Our enrollment is stable, and at the same time, according to Adrian's measurements, a lot of our spaces were already actually pretty large and underutilized. So in a traditional quad that has 4 people, it could, by those measurements above, hold 4 or 5 or 6 people. In most places, we're not doing that. It remains at 4, but that certainly answers the question, why not a single for everyone? As she was working in the spaces, the new capacities and occupancy levels really allow us to equally distribute the space across campus and within buildings. And so again, some spaces in the past had really been underutilized. So maybe there were 2 people occupying a rather large room, and this year it might go to 3 people because again, we're trying to spread people out evenly. And so in the past, if 2 people were occupying a room, that might mean the room next to it had to take on more people. And so with her good measurements and guidance and science, we're able to spread people out. The cold dorms, of course, typically would house 20, 24 students. Those have had a significant reduction in capacity, some as low as 4 or 5, which is a big change from the 20 as before. There you can see a room in Martindale, and this is actually a double. I think it's good that you can't see the other bed because it shows that it's more than 10 feet apart. You'll see signs like this: do not move the furniture in your sleeping rooms. You'll see more signs like this, one-way entries, not only into residence halls and fraternities, but academic buildings as well, and within buildings. And so this is the Dean of Students office with an entrance only on one side and an exit on the other side. Stairwells have also been marked, and so some stairwells are indicated for going up, while others have an indication for going down. I mentioned earlier dining on the housing end, and so as you know, fraternity men eat in their fraternity, independent men eat at Sparks, and so I'm going to speak in very general terms that will cover both Sparks, independent dining, and fraternities. And so whether you're in Sparks or in your fraternity, you can definitely see limited or no dining room tables and chairs. The buffets and the common serveries won't be used. All food will be served as grab and go. So where can you eat is often the question. Well, you could eat in your individual room. You could eat in common spaces. You could eat outside, which leads us to the talk of tents. And we are in the process working with a vendor to put up tents across campus in about 5 or 7 locations that could be used by all students. So not just fraternities, not just independent students, but all students. That might be another option for outside dining. We've also considered expanding mealtime hours to cut down on traffic in Sparks and in the dining areas of the fraternities. And we'll be working on determining traffic patterns for service and marking spaces for entering and exiting the dining area. Hand sanitizing stations are available upon entry into all dining areas. That's true in Sparks, that's true in the fraternities as well. At this point, obviously our professional contract with Bon Appetit will support us in many ways with their professional policies, procedures, and protocols. That's for independent students and for about 3 or 4 of our fraternities. The Another group of fraternities are now professionally contracted with campus cooks, which will serve us well in many ways. We are also working with the Montgomery County Health Department to look at and review our reconfigured spaces in food prep and dining. There's a shine that maybe you haven't seen before, and so this shows the entry into Sparks to the left and to the right. You can see different stations that have been set up. Again, the common lines with the common serveries won't be utilized, and so those are some individualized serving stations. If you live in Martindale, Rogie, or Williams, you might be used to a communal kitchen, and while there's hope that we'll be able to open those up with time, right now you'll be greeted that that communal kitchen is closed for a variety of health reasons. Again, we hope that with time we'll be able to open those, but I want you to know that now so you don't pack a bunch of food to bring to campus and then find out that that communal kitchen is closed. At this time, I want to turn it over to Beth Warner, who has a variety of things related to student activities.
Okay, thank you, Dean Welch. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what options we will have for students as far as student activities. I want to go over first a few things that we know are happening. The first is Fraternity Rush. So making sure that we have the opportunity for our freshman students, incoming students, to be able to learn more about fraternities and potentially join them if they're interested. So we've changed the format of that a little bit this year, allowing for more of a fair style setup on the mall. The first 2 days that our freshmen are moving in, so August 7th and 8th, all of our fraternities will be represented there, and students will have the opportunity to talk with them more about that. We chose the mall in order to allow for more space and sort of keep people physically distant and keep students outside primarily. And then after that, after those first 2 fair events, we'll have the opportunity for individual houses, if they're still recruiting new members, to host events according to set guidelines at their houses beyond that. Our IFC has been working really hard on this process this summer, and they'll be sharing more information with our freshman students as they come to campus about what other events will be available after those first 2 days. Those 2 Fraternity Rush events are listed in the new student orientation schedule. And beyond that, we still want our students to be able to learn more about what engagement opportunities are available on campus, what student clubs we have, and what activities they can get involved in. So our student club and activities fair will be hosted the first Friday after school starts. That's August 14th on the mall, again, allowing for us to spread out and have a lot of different space between our participants, but still allow students to get that information and to get to know more about what they can join and get involved in. We're putting a lot of emphasis this year on activities that are organized by living units, floors, and buildings. We're really concerned about our capacities and making sure that we can keep people spaced out. So activities that help us to organize with smaller capacities will really serve us well as we're thinking about these different events. Another thing that we're working on are multiple occurrences of the same events, again, for capacity reasons, so that we can keep that space between people. Still allow students to come to events and have fun with each other, but keep our density just generally a little bit lower. One thing that is new this year is really working with our student organizations from the very beginning on planning their events. So really starting as soon as a student organization has the idea and wants to get going on that, we're really going to start working with them on the health and safety procedures that they need to be following, on the best venues that they need to be using, and really supporting them throughout that process to make sure that they have what they need in order to host events effectively, but also safely. And really working with them throughout to make sure that we're following those safety guidelines. One thing that I'm excited about are our new sort of format for chapel talks. We're currently in the works and figuring out how we can host our chapel talks, as this is a long-standing tradition at Wabash and allows our community to come together once a week. And so right now we're working with our IT department, and especially Brandon Rash and also Brent Harris with technical support on how we can host that. And we're looking at some options, including having our speaker on the chapel steps and then sound amplified over the campus mall so that everyone can hear it, still be physically distanced, but still be able to be together for that event. We're still looking into some options for recording talks and making those available online, should weather not be friendly on that particular day. I think you'll notice a theme in what I'm talking about is that we're trying to keep as much as we possibly can outside in order to allow for greater physical distance between people and also just allow for greater airflow. So activities that we're currently working on that our student senate committees have been working on really hard all summer. So movie nights on the mall, having a large inflatable screen, having sound amplified, and allowing people to sort of space out and still be able to see that event. We're currently in talks to see if we can screen some live sporting events. We're hoping to be able to do that once sporting events resume. Trivia nights on the mall, same idea, hosting with that large screen, keeping people spaced out, but still allowing them to come together in some ways. And then other recreation activities that allow for distance. We're looking into some options for potentially having disc golf goals set up on campus that might allow for students to be able to participate in that. It's an activity that stays outside. People can be farther apart. Badminton tournaments have come up as options, as well as croquet. So we're still looking into what all that might be. And then finally, continuing with virtual activities, which we had good success with in the spring and that we're hoping to continue for certain things that really just can't happen outside. So some of those things might be gaming tournaments, watch parties for different things, trivia nights. We've hosted a few virtual trivia nights that have had pretty good success, as well as our student leadership and organization training so that we can continue to offer that support and that development for students, but not necessarily have everybody in the same room all the time. One thing that I think is really important to note as far as student activities goes, the question that I've been getting all summer, and I think it really speaks to how much this community values the engagement of our students and making sure that your experience is the best it possibly can be, is what are we going to have students do for fun? I've heard it from all different parts of our campus, and so we're really concerned about making sure that you can get engaged, that you can still have fun, but that we're doing it in the safest way possible. All right, so I think I'm going to turn it over to Dean Thrush now.
Thank you, Beth. So first I want to talk to any new students and new parents that might be watching. You've heard about our 2-day move-in. And so that is going to take place on August 7th and 8th. And I think Dean Welch said it earlier, you received a date and an opportunity to sign up for a time. We are limiting you to students to bring just 2 other people with you so that we can limit the amount of people that are on campus. Orientation sessions, we've tried to work really hard to keep all of the really important events in orientation that will help you get off to your best start here at Wabash. But in order to do that, we've had to keep some things into small groups, smaller groups than normal, and utilize Zoom. The new student orientation schedule is available on the new students website for you to take a look at all the, I won't go into all the details of all the different sessions, but just know that we will be keeping students in small groups. We will be offering a pretty robust orientation program still, even though doing most of it virtually. Masks and social distancing will be required at all times during orientation. And the ringing in ceremony will look a little differently this year in that it will just be for the speakers and the new students. That'll take place on Sunday evening, August 9th at 7:15 p.m. And parents and families, we know this is something you always look forward to. This year, though, we ask you that you join us virtually through our wabash.edu/live, and we will offer this ringing in ceremony virtually through that link. So this disability services applies to new students and returning students. So if you're a new student, you should have already filled out the special needs disability form on the new student roadmap and sent that to me via my email. And what I'm going to ask you to do is wait to set up an appointment with me until you've been to all of your classes. And once you've been to your classes, we will meet. That way you have all of your syllabi and we can customize your classroom accommodations based on what you will be doing this semester in all of your classes. So you'll email me for an appointment the week of August 17th. You can go ahead and start setting up those appointments now if you choose. You don't have to wait until August 17th to do that, but we will meet the week of August 17th. Returning students, you can also email me now, and we will start setting up your appointments the week of August, or when school starts on August the 12th. This year, we're not going to do walk-in appointments, although I still will be around, I will be accessible. We'll meet via Zoom or we'll meet outside with masks and social distancing. And classroom accommodation letters, those of you that have worked with me before know that I feel like it's important for you to hand carry those letters to faculty so that you can have conversations about the classroom accommodations. But this year we're going to have to do things a little bit differently in that I don't want the exchange of papers happening with everybody. So I'm actually going to email those accommodations to faculty, and those meetings with faculty again will take place either via Zoom or outside with masks and social distancing, whatever folks are most comfortable with. But still note, even with these no walk-in changes, that we are still accessible and available, just like we were during the spring semester when you were at home. And then the final thing I'd like to say is that the Wabash College Counseling Center remains open, and that you can email counseling@wabash.edu to make an appointment. Appointment availability will actually begin before the semester begins on August 12th. So it begins on August the 3rd. And we want to remind you to make sure that you're being proactive about your mental health care. So make those appointments early, get on Jamie and Laura's schedule, and let them help you navigate all these changes in COVID and anything else that might be going on in your life right now. And I think I will turn it back to Dean Welch.
Thank you, Dean Thrush and Beth Warner. I also want to thank another Warner, and that's Dr. Warner, who's been working closely with the Sphinx Club leadership on how we will do things certainly differently, but what new opportunities might also exist. So thank you for the student leadership and to Dr. Warner on that. I don't know about you, but whenever I'm looking for some inspiration, motivation, I go over to the Wabash College track and field or Coach Clyde Morgan's Twitter. And so I wanted to share with you some tweets, some social media posts that were made last week upon the announcement of the suspension of athletic seasons. And so you can see where he says, our adversities will make us stronger. Bad teams are destroyed by a crisis. Good teams survive them. Great teams improve by them. And your attitude is everything, men. It's what you do during the storm that shows what type of man you are. And whether you're on a sports team or not, I think we can all find some type of motivation, perspective in those tweets. Same for cross country as well. Wanted to share with you some student tweets, which I think is sometimes even more important, especially for the students themselves. And so you see Nathan's post about being knocked down and getting back up. Kenny Coleman, no season, no problem, so the work continues. Josh Myers, with even more reasons to keep pushing and working harder. And Abe Wade, the season may be canceled or perhaps suspended, but the work can't stop. And these guys have it spot on. It won't stop. A little bit of humor about where we were months ago. Fortunately, we're not in this position now with the coronavirus. Obviously, no cure, certainly not toilet paper. Empathy is not a cure either, but when we talk about bringing less stuff to campus, at least physically, a lot of us are bringing a lot more with us than in the past. We obviously have the loss of athletics, but unfortunately, some of us have lost loved ones. Some of us have lost a job or our economic stability due to COVID-19. Some of us have our own health challenges or we're worried about others. And so these are the types of things that people are bringing that maybe they didn't bring in the past, which is a greater call for all of us to be more empathetic than ever before. I was excited a couple of weeks ago when President Feller shared some characteristics that we all need to exhibit, always, but especially now in the time of COVID-19. And the first one was patience, which really resonated with me because if you've heard me on a panel with incoming or prospective students and families, a question I often get is how do I know as Associate Dean of Students when a Wabash student has really hit his stride, when he's really excelling at all different levels? And so I always go back to these 3 Ps, patience being one of them, and you already heard about that from President Feller. Two others that I would add to that would be perspective and persistence. Again, it's going to be important that you have the perspective of other people, where they're coming from. An athletic season lost, a loved one lost, a job lost, economic stability, again, concerns about their own health or the health of others. It's important to have that empathy and perspective and persistence. A lot of this is going to be inconvenient for you, and so you've got to persist. You have to fight through it in the spirit of Wabash always fights. I had up here, and it's still there, so it's not all about you, and that might sound a little cold and crass, especially as we've talked about the care and concern and the compassion that we have for you always and during the time of COVID. And so I added to it, it is really about you. It's about all of us. And so, choose your hashtag, one Wabash, Wabash together, stronger together, better together. But it really can be about you and everyone else. There's a little more humor about coming home safely, and we're all putting ourselves at risk. And so I think this is important, again, as we think about each individual situation, that we are doing what we can do responsibly to keep not only ourselves safe, but others as well. And so, as you know, there is no cure, but we can control it with appropriate behavior, responsible behavior. Here are two pictures. I was really glad to be there that day. This is one of the immersion trips that came back at the end of spring break, and most of these guys, they were on campus to grab their stuff and go. As you know, that's at the time we announced that we were going online. And so we greeted these students, got them some food, and sent them on their way. And as we think about next week, we're going to have some similar pictures, much more to the positive, of students coming back. But what we want to avoid is this, what we saw in the spring. And so how do we do that? We do it by responsible behavior. And so that we don't see this, we don't want to see this until November, when it's time for Thanksgiving break, meaning that we've completed the full semester. If we're not responsible in our actions, we'll see this all too soon. So it's up to you, men of Wabash. Continue to watch your email for information on testing so that you can be tested at CVS prior to coming campus.